Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast, where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And welcome to this week's weekly recap, where we actually have quite a collection of good news, but of course it really does start with the women's basketball team, but of course we will cover the Batcats as well. But of always, the most important part of every single episode is saying thank you to Grandma, so
Thank you, Grandma.
So let's just go ahead and dive straight into the biggest piece of news for the week, and that is the K-State women's team. After, I'll own it, a lot of people, I will own it. I was part of the group, was like, yeah, Mitty is, he's just not really a Sweet 16 guy. He then proceeded to shut everyone up, and in what is objectively an all-time, if I had a nickel for every single time a K-State basketball team had an all-time classic to advance to a Sweet 16 up against Kentucky, I'd have 2 nickels. Actually, it's probably more than that. It's happened a few times.
That's 2018 one. That was already in the Sweet 16 to get to the Elite 8, but very close. But you would still have 2 nickels, but I think I'd give you a dime for the Sweet 16 victory being a classic as well.
Yeah, this was an absolute classic of a game. Of course, the first game was up against Fairfield. It was never particularly close. I think Fairfield did make a tiny itty-bitty run in the second quarter before K-State decided that they were done playing and dropped a 25-9 third quarter on their heads. So that game wasn't particularly notable, but the Kentucky game was. And of course, you can't talk about this game without the most notable performance being Tamira Poindexter, who just sunk 8 threes. She just decided to go flamethrower mode for this game and this game. Maybe not this game only, but she was on an absolute heater this game.
Yeah, and I think the most surprising part of Tamira's performance in this game is the fact that she started like 0-6 or something like that and finished 8 of 15. So she had an absolute incredible stretch and, was just on fire to end this game, like you said. She was like pretty much the reason that we won this game. That's not to say that other players didn't have really great performances as well, but the timing of some of those shots late in the game and in overtime, that's why we won this game. Directly attributable to Tamira Poindexter.
Yeah, and that's not to say that the other main contributors didn't play well. Serena Sendell played pretty well, got 19. Ioka Lee got 16. She nearly had a double-double, 16 points, 9 rebounds. And yet there were still times where you could definitely tell that she's getting back to used to playing basketball, because there were times that she wasn't that great. There were also times that, and Jalen Glenn also hit 3 really big shots, but there were times that even she was off of her game. But I think that this just shows sort of the importance of what Tamira Poindexter did, because normally if 2 of our starting 5 have an off day, and also no disrespect to Zai Walker because she played it amazing defense basically the entire time, but she's just not been shooting well lately. That's kind of why we've been losing down the stretch, was just inconvenient times to have bad games. But Tamira Poindexter basically just put the team on her back and said, okay, fine, I'll do it myself.
Yeah, she was incredible down the stretch. Serena, of course, had a double-double too, with her 14 assists, which notably gave her the all-time career assist record at K-State, crossing Shaylee Lenning's 800. I remember you and I kind of talking about the pace that she would need to do that pretty early in the season, because she was going to need to have a pretty big year to do it, but she did that. She averaged over 7 assists a game, which is unbelievable. So she absolutely earned this assist record here at K-State. But also I think we do need to talk about Yoki Lee did not attempt a free throw in this game, which I can't remember the last time that has happened. She was not getting a whistle at all in this game. There were a few occasions in particular where the refs really swallowed the whistle, I feel like, with Yoki. But yeah, that was, despite that, an incredible day for K-State in that game. I mean, obviously way more close than the Fairfield game, but yeah, this was a tough one, and it's got to feel good to get one back after last year, the same situation, but the roles were flipped. We were losing on our home floor, but flip the script on Kentucky. Not Kentucky's fault that Colorado beat us last year, but we're going to take it out on them anyways.
Yeah. I also want to give props to Kennedy Taylor, because Kennedy Taylor played pretty well as well and was similarly not getting any whistle. I put out a tweet for it that maybe K-State players just need to complain more, because even the superstar players never get the superstar treatment, and it's getting a little old.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I think another notable thing about this game is Taryn Sides and Jalen Glenn, who you typically think of as the best three-point shooters for K-State. They went a combined 3 of 15. And Taryn was 0 of 5. And Jalen was 3 of 15, and she didn't start making them until like the fourth quarter. Granted, they were big shots, but she was not hitting them early. So Tamira going 8 of 15. Serena, very quietly, who's not a three-point shooter, not known as one, she went 3 of 4 from 3 in this game. So that was pretty huge as well to keep us hanging around in the first half.
Yeah, because there were periods during that first half, especially in that first quarter, where it was looking pretty dicey for K-State. But, they end up just pulling out a victory towards the back end, winning in overtime by 1. And that gives them the right to face the top seed of the region, number 4 overall, in USC. And, of course, the big story here is USC just lost arguably the best player in the country in Juju Watkins. And I think she's sort of in that conversation with Paige Beckers. But
I think it'd be fair to call her the best individual player, but there's a lot of stars in women's basketball right now. So you can pick your poison there.
Yeah. But Juju Watkins won't be able to play this game because she tore her ACL up against Mississippi State. And, on one hand, Connor and I were having this discussion before the episode. I'm not one to cheer for injuries, nor am I ever one to wish injuries upon a player unless that player, has done something particularly egregious to deserve it. So yes, I am wishing injury upon Sedona Prince. In fact, the worse the better. But
I mean, did you see how awkward her dancing was after they won their NIT game? She's pretty much asking to tear something with those moves. So,
but I'm also not going to lie to you if I said that I didn't sigh a little breath of relief there. It's like, oh, we don't have to face Juju Watkins. Don't get me wrong. USC is still a more than capable team, even without Juju Watkins. But Juju Watkins also averages 26 a game.
Yeah. It'll be a tough matchup regardless. They still have some incredible players. They have some great freshmen that don't really get the spotlight because of Juju. And, of course, Kiki Irfan, who I think scored 36 against Mississippi State, something like that. She's a really athletic power forward that is kind of a matchup nightmare for Yoki on the inside because she just moves so well. So that's something to watch. Who we put on her, I imagine it's going to be probably Tamira, maybe. Maybe we find a role for Eliza with that, but I'm not 100% sure if there's really a great option there. But it's something to keep your eyes on. Oh, and another thing on Tamira we didn't mention, she had 6 blocks in this game, which is absolutely absurd, which I can't remember what the stat was exactly, but it was she was the first one to make 8. It was she was the first person to make more than 5 threes and get 5 blocks in a tournament game, and she got 8 threes and 6 blocks. So, I mean, she truly did have the game of her life, and she did all of this. Keep in mind, 0 turnovers for Tamira in this game. I don't think you could really draw up a better game.
No, you probably can't. So I'm very excited to see this matchup against USC. It's this Saturday. They haven't announced the time yet, weirdly enough. But granted, we are recording this a day early for reasons.
And no, I thought they had announced a time for it. Yeah, the ESPN app says 7, but they haven't updated the K-State website for some reason.
Well, K-State people, the people that definitely listen to this show, we need you.
Yeah, so it's going to be primetime billing for K-State and USC. I can't think of a time where K-State women's basketball has gotten like a primetime slot on a major network like this on a weekend, no less. So we're going to be the show on television on ESPN. I mean, there's obviously going to be a lot of men's games going on at the same time, but for the women's crowd, like K-State USC is the game this Saturday, the Saturday evening, that is. But we will be there no matter what. And by there, I mean watching it on TV.
On television. Yeah.
You will not be getting to Spokane.
We do not have the budget for that. Our budget is currently being spent on Avery Johnson lemonade and occasional ham sandwiches.
The Avery Johnson lemonade is actually really good. I was pleasantly surprised. I was fully expecting to be completely disappointed and just have to just be written off as a donation. But no, it's actually really good.
I'll have to give it a try. But that's the exciting news for the women's team. Now we can move to the Batcats, who won their series up against Baylor 2-1, and then I don't want to say beat the crap out of Nebraska because they only did that for 3 innings, but we'll talk about it. But starting off with the first game up against Baylor, K-State kind of jumped on Baylor early, and Baylor never led in this game. K-State ends up winning 8-2, scoring most of their runs in the 2nd and 5th innings and getting an insurance run in the 9th. And I'll cover the offense for this particular game because really there are only 7 hits this game, which you see you put up 8 runs and you're like, what? How did you manage to get only 7 hits across? And a lot of that comes down to sort of timely hitting, I think is the best way to put it. Max Martin went 1 for 4. AJ Vasco is probably him and KOC are probably the MVPs of this game. Vasco goes 2 for 3 with 2 runs and an RBI. And then KOC, Keegan O'Connor, goes 2 for 3 with a run and 2 RBI. And yet, funnily enough, neither of them were the ones that hit homers in this game. That honor belongs to Bear Madliak and Shintaro Inoue. And Bear's home run was, he went 1 for 4, but it was a 3-run homer. And then Shintaro Inoue had the solo shot. So, you can't really complain with an outing like that from the offense. The only thing that you perhaps want to see more of is you want to get more than 7 hits, but you can't argue with the results whenever you get 8 total runs.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about this game. We definitely benefited from some timely errors from Baylor, got a few unearned early. We only hit 7 for 35 on the day and only drew 2 walks, so not great there. But our bullpen was absolutely fantastic in this game as well. James Guyette, he went 4 1/3 with 4 strikeouts and a walk, 4 hits, no earned runs, or no runs at all. So that was one of the best, if not the best, outings of his career. Frost had a solid start, went 4 1/3, 2 earned, 5 strikeouts, a couple walks. Blake Dean came in to get the last out just because Guyette, as a reliever, his pitch count was getting way up there. But pitching, not much to complain about in this one.
Yeah, it is interesting that normally it goes Frost, Dean, Guyette. And this time it was Frost, Guyette, Dean. I am wondering if we are sort of leaning a little too much on Blake, not because I don't think his arm can handle it, but because we've seen other arms that are at least serviceable. I'm not going to say that they are Blake Dean, because Blake Dean, I mean, his curveball is 3,000 RPM, which for those at home, about 2,400 RPM is average for the majors. So that's about what, 20, we'll say about 20, 25% more spin than the average MOB.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm not going to check your math on that, but that
I'm
sounds
not either.
that sounds roughly correct.
Yeah, I am wondering if we are leaning on him a bit too much, because it seems like we always see him during a weekday and we always see him at least once on the weekend, and none of those are like insubstantial.
Yeah, I've actually been kind of wondering the same thing because we did see him in that Nebraska game that we'll talk about here at the end. So I'm a little bit worried about durability in the long term for Blake. I think one thing that could really rectify that problem would be if we'd stop getting in battles in the midweek games. Just close it out and have some of our um, um, deeper arms just take care of business some of these midweeks. That or just have complete offensive explosions more often in those midweeks. But
That's fine. We take those. But for the next game, it was 14-4 in favor of K-State. This one was pretty evenly distributed. K-State scored at least one run from the 4th to the 8th innings, 16 total hits. So, yeah, this is sort of the definition of an offensive explosion. And, Connor, you have the offense here.
Yeah, D. Kennedy led this game off for the Cats, and he was fantastic. He went 3 for 4 and drew 2 walks. Really, you can't ask for much more than that. Maximus Martin, he went 3 for 6. Had a couple of RBI as well. Only struck out once and only scored 1 run. D ever got to mention he had a 3-run homer on the 8th. Other notable players, Keegan O'Connor went 2 for 5 on a solid outing. Dante Lewis playing center field, he went 2 for 3 and drew 2 walks as well. So he had himself a good game. Then Nick English, he pinch hit late and got a double, which was pretty big for him because he's been in a bit of a slump as of late. But it was a good opportunity to get him another at-bat to try and break him out of that nasty slump. David Bishop, he went 1 for 5 but added a home run of his own in this game. So he's not been swinging the bat particularly great this year. Definitely not in the same form as he was down the stretch last year. But on occasion, you'll see the same flashes that we saw last year. So hopefully this year's going to be like last year where he's just going to get better as he goes.
Yeah. I think a lot of that's because Seth Dardar has sort of taken over at first base, and he's done very well in that position. But you get to the pitching, and outside of the literal first pitch of the game for Michael Quevedo, there weren't many pitches that you could qualify as true mistakes. The first pitch of the game for Quevedo was a deep shot. So not ideal, not how you want to start your outing. But he bounced back pretty well, going 5 1/3, only 5 hits, 3 earned, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts on 85 pitches. So you'll take that. It's not quite a quality start. Didn't get the innings requirement for it, but that's still a good enough to win stat line for a starting pitcher and the pitcher of record. And then you get to the bullpen. It was Miles Smith, who I believe we've seen once before this. He pitched 1 2/3, 3 hits, 1 earned run with 3 strikeouts. I thought he looked really good, which for a name that we weren't getting a whole lot in the way of hype for in the preseason, it was very encouraging to see that kind of an outing from him.
Yeah, I think the thing with Miles Smith is going to be command because he can really spin it. He's got a really nasty arm angle that makes it difficult for right-handed hitters. He's a right-handed pitcher. And he's getting a lot of movement on his pitches. The issue is just going to be consistently locating And I think that's something that games like this, where we're just dominating, that's a perfect opportunity to get him some live game action.
And the only mistake that Miles Smith made was another home run where the Baylor player decided that he didn't know how to behave, pimped the home run, and then was promptly ejected in perhaps one of the most hilarious ways possible. Pimping a home run down 10, getting immediately ejected.
Yeah, and it was kind of an unceremonious ejection too. Like nobody seemed to
to
really.
leave.
Yeah, no one really noticed until at least on the broadcast until like the next half inning, because he just didn't come out of the dugout because he was back in the locker room.
Yeah, no, I would like to think that he was just kind of politely asked to leave. It's like the parent at a PTA meeting who's a little too enthusiastic. Yeah, they're just yeah, probably get out of here, buddy.
Yeah, I imagine something along those lines is probably what happened.
Yeah. And then the last pitcher is Adam Arthur, who goes 2 innings, only 1 hit and 2 strikeouts. He's sort of filled in the Cole Weisenmaker role pretty well. Sort of lefty specialist, high leverage innings. I would argue that he's not as good as a true lefty specialist, but better in leverage situations than Weisenmaker, which is why I think that, once they're both back next year, because Weisenmaker is not coming back this year, he tore his UCL. But I think that that'll be a really solid lefty combination for K-State. But yeah, all in all, you take a 14-4 victory, and then Baylor got really mad and took it all out on us the next day.
Yeah, they really held on to their offense until the last possible moment in this one, because K-State gets blown out 19-4, but they didn't really start scoring until the fifth inning. Yeah, so we were halfway through the game before they decided to really get into it. And it was the sixth inning was where pretty much all the damage happened. They put up 11 runs in the sixth to put it into run rule territory, because after that fifth inning, they put up 6 runs in the fifth. K-State actually got a 2-run homer to cut it to an 8-4 lead, which actually is pretty manageable. But it was just a series of unfortunate events for Batcat pitching, and then the tail end of the sixth. Not great stuff at all for the Cats.
No. The only notable performances are KOC going 2 for 3 and then Seth Dardar hitting a home run. But pretty much every single pitcher of record except for Ben Rosen got blown up.
Yeah, it was there are definitely some. It's worth it, I think, to the very least kind of go through these just to get a laugh. Lincoln Sheffield didn't have his best performance in this game. 8 hits given up in 4 2/3, 5 earned, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, had a wild pitch, 83 pitches. Just not a great start for Lincoln. Taz Butler came in relief, and that's where the separation really kind of started. Was he didn't actually record an out in his 15 pitches and gave up 3 earned on 3 hits and a walk. Tanner Duke, he came in for a third of an inning, and he still gave up 3 earned and walked 2 and a hit. So that fifth inning there was pretty brutal. Brody Rowe, 6 runs given up, only 1 of them earned. Then 2 walks, 4 hits, 24 pitches to get through 2/3. Micah Henson came in, and unfortunately, he had a really, really bad few batters. He faced 4 batters, and I don't think he threw a strike, actually. I remember going through the plays, and it looked like it was just a bunch of 4-pitch walks from Mike Henson, which is really unfortunate because he's had some outings earlier in the year where he's been a little better. Ben Rosen, he forced a fly out mercifully after a walk and 11 pitches. But yeah, Baylor saved up all their runs for 2 innings after they had already lost the series, which I guess they can get their humiliating win and will take a road series in Waco for the first time since 2017. I think that's a fair trade.
That's fine. But yeah, Micah Henson, it was 3 4-pitch walks and then 1 hit by pitch.
Yeah, that's not really great. In my opinion, I'm not a pitcher, but I would strive to do more than that.
As a former pitcher, there are very few ways that could go worse. I would almost rather give up a dinger I'd rather give up a dinger in 1 pitch than have that happen to me.
Well, at least you're throwing strikes, because
Yeah.
I mean, well, that's just also really unlikely. To walk 3 on 4 pitches, then hit a batter. I mean, that's quite a few pitches to go without finding the zone, which is very unfortunate for Micah Henson. But he's a true freshman, so that's a teachable moment.
Yeah. As with all pitching for young guys, you just treat it as a teachable moment and then move on. But you end up picking up the series up against Baylor. So you end up playing Nebraska as well in Manhattan on a rare Tuesday game, funnily enough, which, like I said earlier, we're recording this on a Wednesday, so it's the day after. But K-State ends up winning this game 12-8. And you think, that's a relatively comfortable victory. Yeah, all but one of those runs came in the first 3 innings, and Nebraska just kind of kept clawing their way back into the game. And that's sort of what made me uncomfortable with this game was we jumped them early. Like, it was 11 runs in the first 3 innings. They only had 2. And then, just 1 inning at a time, they just kept getting hits. They kept getting 1 run back at a time. And it was starting to get a little worrying, but luckily that they did not even if they did continue that pace, they wouldn't have won the game. But yeah, I'll take the pitchers for this one because you have the offense.
Yeah. The thing to remember with this game is that K-State scored 5 runs in the first, but I think all 3 Nebraska errors were in the very first inning as well.
Yeah.
Where they had a error on, I think it was a fielding error to begin with, or throwing errors. I can't remember which one they decided it was because it was really both on the shortstop, because I could have given them 2 errors on 1 play. Then the very next play, I think, was a overthrow by the catcher on a steal attempt by D. Kennedy, and then a reach on a fielder's choice for AJ Vasco, which scored the first run of the game, where the error actually, it was kind of funny because I think Nebraska challenged this call. I thought it was umpire initiated. I can't remember, but
it was a challenge.
Yeah, so Nebraska challenged and got quite possibly the worst challenge outcome in the history of college baseball, because they challenged a double play where I think they were saying that he was safe at first, and they were saying that Nebraska was challenging that he was out because AJ rolled one over. But on replay, not only was AJ safe by like half a step, quarter of a step, but the shortstop or second baseman, whoever it was, at second base, his foot was not on the bag when he caught the ball. So not only was AJ safe at first, but the runner on the way to second on what should have been a double play ended up safe. So it went from 1 out to 0 outs and a run with nothing in return for Nebraska. So that's just an absolutely brutal way to lose a challenge. That first inning was just embarrassing, honestly. It was a 5-zip lead early. Nebraska got a couple back, but K-State, really controlled and probably should have won by more than they did. But there were still some great performances. Bear Madliak, he went 3 for 4, 2 RBIs in this one, and he had a monster home run on a liner that was out in a hurry. The Maximus Martin, he went 2 for 4, and he got his 10th homer of the year. So on a pretty incredible pace right now, Maximus Martin, in terms of home runs, leading K-State by far in that department. Seth Dardar, he went 2 for 4. He had 4 RBIs, and he had 2 opposite field gap doubles to start the game. almost the exact same spot and pretty much the exact same circumstance both times. So it was a little strange, but beyond that, D. Kennedy went 1 for 3 and drew 2 walks, scored 3 runs. But yeah, this was a solid day for the most part for the K-State offense. Definitely got some help from the Nebraska defense early. Because at one point, I think it was 3-0 and we didn't have a hit, and or something. It was something ridiculous like that. But no, the bats were working. Cooled off a little bit late, but we had done enough damage early that it just didn't really matter.
Yeah. Then you move on to the pitchers. The starter was Dante Lewis, who went 4, gave up 6 hits, 3 earned runs, 4 total, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, 1 wild pitch, and 1 hit by pitch. I would have hated to have been the one that was hit by that pitch because it was a fastball right on the kneecap. I know that hurt a lot. And this is a conversation I think is better to have now because it's one that we had yesterday. But I would almost rather us have Dante Lewis not necessarily be a weekday starter, but be like a high leverage reliever while still being a two-way player. Kind of like the Dylan Phillips, where Dylan Phillips was our closer for a while. Because I think Dante Lewis's main skill set right now is not finesse. He's just kind of throwing really hard and relying a little bit on stuff. And that's more of a reliever skill set. So am I complaining that he's starting? No, because he's probably earned it. In fact, he almost certainly has earned it. But, if I were on the sticks, which we've made it abundantly clear that I am not, he'd be more of a high leverage reliever.
Yeah, I think that's a decent line of thinking. I'm curious how we use him going forward, particularly maybe as he becomes a better hitter. Maybe that changes because right now he's a pretty inconsistent hitter. He's just not making strong contact very consistently. He's pretty much there as a defender in center. Like that part of his game is already really good, but definitely needs work on command with his pitching. Definitely needs work on consistency in the batter's box. I could see where he eventually becomes a high leverage reliever and maybe Pete sees throwing him to start on some weekday games is just maybe a way to get him more innings faster as a young pitcher, which maybe that's what he's trying to do. Maybe we see him as a future ace, and then when we bring a reliever, we just have him run back to center field. I don't know what our long-term plan is with Dante, but it's clear that he's supremely talented, if nothing else.
Yeah. But the next pitcher of record is Ty Rule. Goes 1 inning, 1 hit, 1 earned run, 2 walks, and a strikeout, facing 4 batters. I talked to Connor about this, and granted, it's been a while since I've pitched, but I think Ty Rule, his front foot is just – I think in his kick, if you watch his motion, it's not consistent. And he's not getting that stride that he's getting on that way home. Because Ty Rule's a tall man. Like, he's a tall guy. So ideally, you want to get as much as you can with your stride, and he's just not doing that. And I think the kick is also kind of affecting his command a little bit. So it might be one of those situations where he's not conscious of it, because there's a lot of things that once you just start throwing, if you don't train your mechanics to a T, or if you let bad mechanics stick around for a while, it's so hard to change. But yeah, I just noticed his front foot, his kick was a little off. And it could be that it's been off the entire year, but it was the first time I noticed it today.
Yeah, it's not something that I've been paying attention to just because I just don't have that background. But that would explain his inconsistency. You're absolutely right. Because Ty Rule has been one of the most inconsistent pitchers, I think, in our time doing the show. Because there's been times where he's just been unthrowable, and there's been times where he's actually unhittable. So you just never know what Ty Rule you're going to get. I didn't get the best version of them in this game, but definitely could have been worse.
Yeah. Then Adam Arthur comes in for a third of an inning, gives up an earned run off of a walk, and a hit by pitch, so just kind of unlucky. Then Blake Dean, 2 2/3, 4 hits, 2 earned, 4 strikeouts, and a wild pitch. Then James Guyette comes in for the 9th inning, ends up striking out the side. So, granted, it took him 23 pitches to do so. And I think that one might just be an approach thing. Like, Nebraska they weren't focusing on, hard contact. They were more than willing to just try and waste the arm. So, I don't get that. I don't blame Guyette for that. But all in all, you can't really pin a lot of the runs on one person, but it was getting mad uncomfortable there for a while.
Yeah. This game, I was at this game and I kind of just relaxed after the first couple of innings because I was like, okay, we're just going to cruise in this game. It really took until about the 6th or 7th inning for me to kind of register that it was actually a bit closer than I thought it was. So even though K-State probably should have won this game by more, it was still for the most part a comfortable win, although it did get a little bit too close for comfort there at the end. But still a really quality win.
Yep. So K-State, as it stands right now, is, I believe, 16-8 and 5-1 in conference play. Their next series is a big one up against Texas Tech, and luckily we get them in Manhattan. I think, weirdly enough, for as much as we were giving the schedule a sort of glance over at the beginning of the year, it's sort of worked out pretty well. Because Oklahoma State, I'm still waiting for them to figure it out, and knowing us, it'll be against us that they figure it out for. But the rest of the conference play, I'm not going to say is light, but it's not as bad as it could have been because you get West Virginia at home. And I think West Virginia is the big one that scares me most left on the schedule. I think everyone else, we have a better chance than not of at least taking the series.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. UCF is another team that I think is going to be a tough out. But, K-State right now, we're starting to get into the point with RPI where there's more of a sample size. So K-State's been sitting at 25 for about a week now. I think they got up as high as 21 after their Saturday win over Baylor. They dropped back down to 25 after their Sunday loss, and the Nebraska game did not move the needle, which maybe says a lot about Nebraska this year. But it's K-State's really sitting at near the top of the conference in RPI. West Virginia is right there at number 28. Arizona State's right there at 27. So it's noteworthy. Coastal Carolina, they're up at number 4. It's a team that K-State lost to twice the first weekend of the season. So that's something that's aged pretty well. But yeah, K-State conference play sits tied with Arizona as the only 5-1 schools at the top of the conference. So pretty good spot to be right now. A lot of baseball left, but I would say it's probably fair to say that K-State is ahead of where we thought they'd be.
Yeah, which granted, we keep prefacing it with this or leaving off with this. Young team. They could do anything. And it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's kind of where I sit with them right now. We still, I think, need a couple more weekends for the conference to really shake out because Tech had a really, really bad non-conference, but they're 4-2 in conference play right now. So we'll see if that holds or not. And then Oklahoma State, they're traditionally really good, but they're 1-3 in conference play right now. So again, that's just going to be a wait and see thing. West Virginia, they were excellent in non-conference, but they're 2-2 in conference play right now because they did play a pretty soft non-conference slate. They dropped a series at home to Arizona, who is admittedly good, but I think we're going to learn a lot about how the Big 12 is going to shake out this year, probably in the next 2 weekends. Once we hit mid-April, I think we'll have a good idea of where we stand.
I 100% agree. You have any final notes before we sign off?
No, nothing else from me.
All right. Well, that's the case. Thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdward00.
I am at Connor Baltzor, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store. Most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.